Destruction or brilliance, freedom or pain, a lifetime of movement or a date with the surgical table. How you land to the ground dictates which path you will take. Projections show that joint replacements are going to skyrocket over the next 10 years, with some projections being as high as 673%. Today, we're talking about injury-prone and injury-resistant landings and how you can continue doing what you love and avoid becoming a statistic using the Move Pain-Free system.
Welcome to the Movement Monday podcast brought to you by Move Pain Free. I'm your host, Joe Comer. This is your haven for learning how your body is designed to move, taking deeper dives into slow motion film analysis and simple exercises you can use to unlock your potential and move pain free for a lifetime.
What if I told you that everyone that got hurt or that experienced chronic pain landed to the ground in the exact same movement pattern? Would you believe me? Well, seeing is believing, and I'm about to show you the pattern of injury right now. The first thing we're going to look at is the foot. What happens at the foot in faulty movers is the pressure is going to cave inside onto the big toe, meaning the arch of the foot has collapsed. This results in an inefficiency of energy transfer all the way up the body during movement. The inside edge of the foot is where all injuries in the foot and all the way up the body take place. When this is coupled with heel striking, that's when catastrophic injuries such as ACL tears, Achilles shreds, and torn hip labrums take place. In fact, I challenge all viewers to find an ACL tear that doesn't occur on a flat foot due to inside edge pressurization. Moving up the chain, repetitive heel striking and inside edge collapse results in compression in the ankles, thus locking up the shin. Couple this with compressed hips that are shoved forward in the socket, we start to load pressure improperly during our landing. What we're now going to see is a lack of external rotation through hip extension. In fact, what we're going to see is the leg is going to load internally during hip extension. And a good way to see this is the direction of the kneecap upon landing and loading. So when we look at it this way, what we're actually going to see is the kneecap is going to be relatively straight and trace in. And that's going to be a sign that we are internally rotating during hip extension or during loading. Now, loading internally is essentially creating more stress on the ligaments that transfer into all dynamic movements. This stress and internal loading during the hip extension is going to result in improper glute activation, more knee tendonitis and injuries, and a list of potential hip injuries. The final thing we're going to see here is a locked up spine. As we load into the landed leg, we see the chest isn't pointing in the same direction as the kneecap, and the head is going to fall on the inside part of the foot, staying centered in the body. What this is doing is it's not allowing us to stack our center of mass properly, creating an unstable structure during movement. This will put a lot of stress on the disc of the spine and promote inefficient energy transfer during movement. It hinders our ability to fully access our spinal engine, which is what allows our spine to promote these safe landings. Now, equal and opposite to the pattern of injury, pain-free movers actually share their own pattern of security. What we're going to see in an injury-resistant mover is the toes are going to lock onto the ground with the heel climbing. The foot then acts as a spiral staircase, and by doing this, we are pressuring the outside edge of the foot. This is key, as proper toe lock and heel climbing prevents inside edge pressurization, which, as we know, is where injury and pain occurs. In an injury-resistant mover, what we see is the hip and ankle are going to work in unison. What this looks like is during hip extension, we're actually going to get external rotation, meaning the hip and the ankle are going to open away from the midline of the body. A good indication here to quickly identify this shape is the direction of the kneecap, which points out when the hip and ankle open properly. Now, this can happen on a decompressed foot in which the toes lock down and the heel climbs. And this action is what allows us to accept energy in a spiral manner. Similar to the hip and ankle, we want to see the same behavior from the spine. A decompressed and proper functioning spine will move with the hip as we accept force on the ground. Now, a quick way to identify this behavior is by checking the direction that the chest faces. A spine that properly accepts force will have the chest pointing out in the same direction of the kneecap as we accept this force. Now, having a spine that's going to properly accept force is going to take a lot of compression out of the disc in our back. And by doing this, we're also going to tap into our full potential as it pertains to efficient energy transfer. Our body was designed a specific way for a reason. Let's take a deeper look into how the pattern security keeps us from injury and pain. Energy moves in spirals. Our body is a system of spiraling segments meant to accept, redirect, and release force in a natural pattern of energy movement. As you can see, our muscles, bones, and tendons all form a spiraling shape. Even our earliest blueprint moved in spiral energy. Yet, many of us lose our ability to move in this 3D pattern and start to get injured in a 2D pattern, whether this comes from training inputs, resting behaviors, or even bad footwear. A massive loss of the natural patterns of human movement is the reason we are seeing unprecedented levels of pain, injury, and surgical intervention in the world today. Energy moves in spirals. The pattern of injury doesn't move in spirals, yet the pattern of security does. Let's take a look at some high-functioning humans who used spiral energy transfer. So as we take a look at Ed Reed, one of the best safeties to ever do it, what we're going to see right away is as he lands, the toes are going to lock and we're going to start to get this heel to climb up. He has a decompressed foot, and by doing this, he's allowing his hip and his ankle to now work in unison. As we take a look at that, what we're going to see is they're going to start to externally rotate during hip extension, meaning that we're going to get the knee to point away from the midline of the body. So then as we look at Simone Biles, we're going to see the same thing. She takes a step, these toes are going to lock down into the ground, this heel is going to start to climb. Doing this is going to allow the hip and the ankle now to work in unison. So as we take a look, we're going to see external rotation during hip extension, meaning the kneecap is moving away from the midline of the body. It is now pointing out. There we have a proper opening of the hip and the ankle. Looking on up, what we're going to see now is this chest is going to get over and face the same direction as the kneecap. She does have a mobile spine and it's opening up, it's rotating out with the knee, and it's accepting energy out in a spiral manner. So the last person we're going to look at is the Michael Jordan. First thing, note right away, Jordan lands, toes locked down, heel starts to climb. From there, we can have an opening of the hip and the ankle together in unison. As we see during hip extension, we're getting external rotation. The kneecap is now pointing out away from the midline of the body. From there, moving on up, what we're going to see then is we are going to see his chest move in the same direction as that kneecap, meaning the spine is mobile and we have proper energy acceptance. We are properly accepting that force in a safe pattern, allowing us to access that spiral energy. Now, one of the biggest takeaways from this entire video is that this pattern is innate, meaning we see it in the rest of the animal kingdom. So you might be asking yourself, does that mean I run in the same way that a bear does? Yes, that's exactly what it means. Let's take a look. All right, so looking at the bear, what we're going to see from the bear is its paw is going to come in contact with the ground and it's going to funnel that weight toward that outer edge of the paw. It's not going to collapse inwards. Now, the other thing that we're going to see is we're then going to see the joints above, which is the shoulder and the wrist, are going to load out. It's going to load out just like we saw in the human. And from there, we're going to see the weight of the bear and that chest shift over to that loaded leg. That is the same pattern as when the human lands, the foot locks, heel climbs, the hip and the ankle open up, and that chest rotates over and faces the same direction to that kneecap. That is the same behavior that we're seeing in this bear right here. So what we're going to see from the chimp is it's going to funnel weight to that outer edge of its foot, and then it's going to allow the ankle and the hip to open up, meaning that the kneecap then is going to point away from the midline of the chimp's body, because during hip extension, we have external rotation of the lower limbs. Now, looking at the spine, we then see as the chimp lands and absorbs that force on that landed leg or that loaded leg, the chest is going to point in the same direction as the kneecap, meaning that the chimp is accessing its full spiral energy potential. Now, the bird. Looking at the bird do its little run here, what we're going to see is as its foot hits the ground, what would be the ankle and the hip are going to open up because we have weight on the outside edge of its foot. Now it's going to open up away from the bird's midline of the body and accept force in that manner. And now, by looking at the way that the bird's weight shifts over to that leg, that's also mimicking spinal energy. That spine is accepting force outwards the same way as the hip and the ankle on this bird. It's the same thing that we see in the human, the bear, and the chimp. Keep in mind, these animals live in nature. They're untouched by modern luxuries such as chairs, shoes, and modern training that takes away the spiral in your hip, weakens your foot, and locks up your spine. So where does this start as it pertains to human beings? We didn't just walk out of the womb. Well, humans started out by rolling and crawling on the ground, which is where this whole movement pattern first began. So as we take a look at the crawl here from the baby, the energy is actually going to spiral around the knee from here, since the foot doesn't have any pressure off the ground. Now, it's accepting force at the hip, as we see, since the hip is still loading out during the crawl. We're still getting external rotation during what would be hip extension and a bipedal movement. And another thing that we're going to see in the crawling baby, outside of the energy spiraling around the knee and the hip accepting force out away from the midline of the body, is the spine is also going to accept that energy out in the same direction as the hip. As you can see, we've identified that there is a pattern of security. We've also designed some exercises that will help you reclaim this pattern of security. And just like the crawling baby, we start from the ground up. Let's take a look.
Child rockers are great for decompressing all of the joints and surrounding tissues. This exercise organizes the hip and ankle to allow for proper alignment. The rocking action teaches our hip and ankle to work together as we move forward. Unsupported lateral rockers are great for decompressing the hip and surrounding tissues. This exercise organizes the hip and ankle to allow for proper alignment. The side-to-side action teaches the hip to load properly to allow for safe and efficient movement. The bow wall sit is great for decompressing all of the joints and surrounding tissues. This exercise organizes the entire system to allow for proper posture. The time under tension strengthens the muscles in the legs and the back and teaches our body to land correctly. If you're struggling with pain or injury and you want to alleviate that pain and unlock your full movement potential in your life, click the link below and try one of the free workouts designed by us to get you out of pain in 10 minutes or less. Thank you. You now know more about your body's natural design than 99% of the world. Comment any questions you have, like the video, and subscribe to the channel to keep learning how you can move pain-free.